recording.
And I turn on the captions.
Ma'am?
I turn the captions on so they
Oh,
can
okay,
hear
cool,
and see what
cool.
you're saying too.
Okay, well, welcome to today's Awareness Wednesday. I'm not going to say a whole lot today, but we have Dr. Gibson from Kingwood High School, and she is going to discuss with us critical consciousness in her AP research course and tell us about Sankofa. So I'm just going to let you take it away, Dr. Gibson.
Well, hi. So my name is Dr. Ashley Gibson. I teach AP research and really all of the AP capstone courses here at Kingwood High School alongside AP English. And in the work that I do through my organization, Interior Learning, I focus on helping teachers develop critical consciousness. But as an educator myself, I integrate critical consciousness practices into my pedagogy, my teaching practice. And last year, when I started teaching AP research, I realized that my research students were really struggling with concretizing the reflexive process of research. Like having to go backwards really felt like a waste of time, or it felt like they were having to start all over and start fresh. And I had to instill in them that research is a process of going back and forth. And in my critical consciousness work that I do, I internalize this belief in Sankofa. And Sankofa is a Ghanaian term that means to go back and retrieve and to bring new understandings forward into the present so that you can then move forward with a sense of purpose, a sense of hope. And so Sankofa became sort of a symbol of researcher reflexivity in my research class. And each of the students that are here with me today, I'm so blessed to be their teacher. They were all supposed to be presenting their research and writing in connection with Sankofa at the Texas Name Conference a few weeks ago, but we got rained out. We weren't able to present. And so I'm really thankful, Dr. Taylor Bunn, that you invited us here to Awareness Wednesday to allow my students to share a little bit about Sankofa and the connections that they made in their research. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is how students made those connections. And I'm looking forward to just letting them share their voices and their connections and how they internalized and personalized this work. So the critical consciousness part really is my focus as an educator, and they develop their own levels of consciousness around their projects and research. So I hope that makes sense. Did I do a good job of explaining everything? Okay. All right. So who wants to kind of jump in? I guess Dr. Bunn, you can totally referee this and ask questions that pertain to the work. I mean, the kids are ready.
Okay,
Tommy, go ahead and unmute.
first.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll mute myself.
All right, cool. All right, hi, I'm Tommy. Nice to meet you. My personal research this year was over cinema. I was analyzing the movie Memento by Christopher Nolan. I was looking about how the ill portrayal of mental health with the main character Leonard Shelby contributed to poor views of social conditions and mental conditions by young adolescents. So Sankofa wasn't really like big in my conclusion, but it really was during my research process. So mainly with my method, when I was looking at a lot of my sources, I found a really good source that was talking about the Joker and how portrayals, there we go, of the Joker in society or in public media, and how those portrayals kind of like misconstrued him as a mentally ill person, but he was really just in fact like a serial killer. And if you actually like did like a deep dive into his actual like physical and mental and like emotional traits, he was actually not mentally ill at all, because he's too like coordinated and all that stuff. So there was a certain like content analysis that researcher used in order to conduct their research, and that I kind of like I modified it a little bit to fit my needs, because obviously I don't have a lot of time because it's a 9-month class. But I kind of modified that research, and I kept going back to that over and over again, make sure that what I was doing with my content analysis was kind of congruent to what they did in that one. Additionally, I used Sankofa throughout. We had a lot of like prep documents that we had to work on for like formative grades, but they were really part of the research process, like overall. So like we get a lot of reflections and stuff like that. So on those reflections, I would just take time to brain dump for as long as possible. And so there were a bunch of ideas that I had just within all of my work and all of my just in like my array of like documents that I'd worked on throughout the year, that I was able to like kind of pick and choose what I really like to create the best kind of like combination of things and ideas and different aspects I wanted to include within my 5,000 word paper that I submitted to AP at the end of the year. So that's mainly how I use Sankofa. I definitely used it in more, but I don't want to take anybody else's time. So, but yeah, that's basically the gist of it.
Great job, Tommy. Who's next? Who wants to talk next? All right, Sydney, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, my name is Sydney Schweitzer. For my research project, my topic focused on intergenerational mental illness within the Black community, specifically those that can be transferred, like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, those schizophrenic disorders. And I use Sankofa primarily throughout my research process. I did actually want to go back and look at different sources and different articles and kind of analyze the past 100 to 200 years on mental illness within the Black community. And the practice of Sankofa actually played a big part in that for me because, well, throughout my research process first, I chose several different research methods before I landed on the method that I ultimately ended up doing, which was thematic analysis. And using the practice of Sankofa and remembering Dr. G always saying that, I was able to kind of feel better, not necessarily starting over, but looking back and maybe altering my decisions to get a better outcome. Because we were so far into the year and I was really passionate about doing a case study, and then I was like, okay, well, that's not right, so let me switch to content analysis, and then that didn't exactly fit what I was trying to do. So Sankofa kind of served as that constant reminder to me to actually go back and look at your project goals, look at what you're trying to do, look at what you hope that your research actually contributes to the real world, and maybe alter your decisions based off that. And then additionally, within just my topic at hand, it does deal with a lot of historical elements, and looking back at decades past to analyze what is going on in modern day. And Sankofa served as a really big part of that for me. I was constantly looking back at sources that I coded, kind of seeing what I was missing, and trying to read between the lines and really understand the narrative that was going on versus kind of um in my research, kind of assuming things. And that was really big for me because I felt at times I was trying to prove my question right and kind of gather as much evidence that I had to kind of make sure that I was proving my hypothesis, when in reality, the things that I thought were going to be my outcomes weren't necessarily important at all. And throughout the research process, I understood much more important themes that developed that actually did help me answer my question versus trying to prove myself right. So that's pretty much how I used Sankofa in my method.
That was really well said, Sydney. Is there anyone else who wants to kind of piggyback off of that? Brad? Okay, your turn.
All right. Good warm welcome and afternoon to you, Dr. B. My name is Bradley Ping, although I go today as Brad, and my research endeavor covers a more of an immigrant standpoint of a change over time with Cambodian Americans living in America over the course of roughly a time span between now to about 40 years after the Khmer Rouge, which was a great genocide that had displaced a lot of Cambodians during such a great war. Sankofa, in this standpoint of my research endeavor, has been primarily mostly about going back and looking at especially the history of these such tragic events, especially the perspectives of my parents and grandparents who had gone through a lot of such horrendous acts of hatred that they had to endure for so many years, and to be granted this sort of beaming light from charities and what is the word? Churches and whatnot in the States that allowed, well, me and pretty much all of my family that I can pretty much remember being able to be granted this chance to be here, to be even just be able to talk face to face with you is something that is so huge that I cannot even put into words. And for that main reason, Sankofa has been truly a journey of looking back on myself and truly my parents' overall history to truly understand and gain this sort of new perspective of how change really isn't something that people have to do to adapt. It is more of something of the way you approach it and how you pretty much, how do I say, uh, conquered these severe challenges. So, and looking again with Sankofa, especially, building on family history, uh, it was very, I will say, it was very hard, especially in the 50 sources that we had to look for um, in our assignments for creating our research endeavor. It was actually very hard to find specific like sources on this topic because of how one of how long ago it was, and two, it's just so very fine point that really the true sources of my information were really just my parents and grandparents with their information and their backstories were truly some of the greatest information that I could ever ask for.
That was amazing, Brad. Thank you so much for that. Well said. Does anyone want to follow up with Brad after Brad? Go ahead, Madeline.
Okay, so my topic was consumerism and the convenience store industry, and more specifically Buc-ee's itself. And when I was preparing for Texas Name, I focused more on like Sankofa in a corporate level and how it was implemented at Buc-ee's. So at Buc-ee's, they rely a lot on tradition as it is a family company. And so they always wanted a clean store environment where people feel safe and welcomed. And they have kept that throughout the years. And they have been a company for probably around 40 years. And so as they expanded, this has remained consistent throughout all their stores. And they have made adaptations to make, like they have looked back and made adaptations to make their store more welcoming and more convenient for other people. So this may be like packaging, how to like package different stuff, or how are people going to move through the store and what's going to be wise for them and what they need at their specific locations. And so viewing Sankofa through this, I was like, okay, businesses can use Sankofa in order to improve their practices and not just to cater to people, but they're making it a better environment overall. And then more specifically in my own research, I was able to use Sankofa to make sure all my research was consistent. So I had 3 methods of collecting data. And so that kind of made it hard to make sure my data was consistent and also like made sense together. So Sankofa really helped me to like look back and make sure, okay, so this aligns here and this aligns here. And I could draw more comprehensive conclusions that made sense to answer my research question.
Excellent job, Madeline. Thank you so much. Ainsley, you ready? Yes? Okay, jump in.
All right, good. Okay, sorry. Okay, so for my research, it was about process safety at oil refineries and chemical manufacturers. So I was basically looking at how they're using their process safety management systems, which are the safety systems on the refinery, and how effective they are and where they're like failing, because there's still like large scale accidents that are happening on refineries like in Houston and around the world. So in order to find what factors were like not working or failing, I looked at past research and past case studies having to deal with refineries that had large scale accidents. And I would look back at these accidents to find out like what caused the accident to happen. And then I translated that into the corresponding safety issue that happened to like cause the accident to occur. And so by looking back, like my Sankofa was in my project fully. I looked back at the past to find which issues like were staying consistent throughout the future and the issues that were happening now. So it was basically, I was looking at the evolution of the issues that I had identified on oil refineries and the safety that was going on. So that was basically how I used Sankofa, just the comparison, because then I got to see like
what was failing in the past and what is failing most recently. And I was looking to see if there was any correlation and if like the issues mostly I had found were not changing. So there was obviously an issue with like, we're seeing all these issues happen on the oil refineries to cause like large scale accidents, but no solutions are being put in place. So Sankofa basically just helped me like look at that evolution of issues and try to come up with solutions to potentially lessen the issue at hand.
Well said, Ainsley. That was a really impressive. All of these presentations, I mean, I got to listen to them in their oral defenses, and I was just like, "Ooh, what? This is what we've been doing all year." It was just really amazing, impactful, and I think the Sankofa it really only served to further enrich what was already super robust, right? So they had more of a handle, I feel like, on what the process was, and that's the focus of AP research. Research is really the process. Is there anyone else who has not shared yet? That's on. Jacob, are you on? You're not logged on? Okay. Connie, you're underage. Do you want to share your voice though? Do you want to? Yeah. Are they allowed to just share or not be on camera?
Well, they can share and I'll cut them out when we post
Oh, I muted
it.
you. Hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
We can share. I have to have parental consent to publish.
Oh, okay. Okay, no voices. Sorry, guys. Well, I know one tier, singular tier. Well, all of these wonderful students that are on today are receiving an extra graduation core. Do you want to? Can they? Okay, yeah, we can do that. Let's do that. They are very intent on their classmates sharing, so yeah, right. Okay, what? I'm trying to figure out how we would do that though in this moment. Okay. Issa's gonna type something out real quick.
Hang on. I'll stop let me pause the recording.
Okay, yeah. And then Sydney's gonna read it out. Who wants to currently not okay?
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Sydney, and
Oh,
I'm
wait,
here.
Sydney. Let me mute everything first. I forgot to get ready. Okay. All right.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and I am reading on behalf of my fellow peer researcher, Issa Pignon. Issa is underage and could not present her work herself. However, she still wanted to contribute to the scholarly conversation. So she provided an excerpt for me to read, which I will do now. So this is from the words of Issa Pignon. Hello, this is Issa Pignon. I did my research on sleep psychology in teenagers and the misalignment between sleep cycles and high school start times. Throughout my research, I used Sankofa both practically and in my findings during the process. I constantly looked back at my prior research and what I've learned in prior classes to help me move forward. When I was stuck in my findings, I looked back on my life and how my lack of sleep affected me in the past to contextualize my findings. From Issa Pignon.
Right. Connie, are you still typing? He's still writing his essay. Issa, that was fantastic. Thank you. I love how you said that you used it practically, and what were the words? Practically and that was a great distinction to make there. Well, I guess, Dr. Bunn, if you want to start asking some questions while we wait for Connie's words, that would be completely fine.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to get everybody kind of on my screen here because we might just do show of hands. So I'm just thinking through some of your comments and some of what your topics were. I know one of you, I think Sydney, I think it was you who mentioned that you had that impulse, you're trying to prove your hypothesis, right? When you're looking for data, it's so enticing to find that data that you're like, yes, that's what I was looking for. That makes me right. But you also have to include the things that might prove you wrong, right? So I'm kind of wondering how many of you picked a topic that you were already pretty passionate about or that already impacted you personally? Buc-ee's, raise your hand. You know you love Buc-ee's and that's why you researched it. Come on now. Come on. Okay. So did anybody research something that was completely new and didn't really affect you at all? Ah, okay. That surprises me in Houston, actually, just because of, oil spills are a big risk there. Do you think that when you're close to a topic, do you think that makes it harder to filter out the data that you get, or does it make it a little bit more challenging to consider data if you're close to a topic and are trying to confirm your own biases? Kind of. Not a little bit. Yes. So I'm not looking for a right answer.
Who it is?
I know at least for me, what part of
There you go. Sorry.
one thing that Dr. G did have us do at the beginning of the year was she had us compile a list of about 50 sources. And they were different categories for different things. And one of the categories I remember was articles or sources kind of disproving your topic, or maybe something like that was on a different viewpoint than typically like what the norm was. So in regards to like mental health, like I researched a lot of like new research on intergenerational mental illness, because there isn't like a set definition of that. And a lot of it's kind of a theory and such. So a lot of people were kind of like disproving that and saying like other things that had to do with the prevalence we see of mental illness, specifically as generations go by. So that was something kind of hard to me, where I kind of had to like get out of like my mind and what I thought was right and kind of put my biases aside and like try to be like a real researcher and understand like what the source was saying.
That's good. Dr. G knows what she's doing. She's got you considering all sources. I love to hear that. So why do you think it's important to know how to be?
Okay, Sydney's going to now read for
Are they ready?
Connie.
Okay.
Hello, this is Sydney Schweitzer. I am reading on behalf of my fellow peer researcher, Connie, and I quote, Sankofa was an integral part of not only my research process, but my research itself. For my research, which pertained to the societal portrayal of lyricism of Black artists, it allowed me to look back on the message of Black music throughout the time of the 19th century America until now. Seeing the shift on commentary on treatment to commentary on issues that contributed to it, along with assignments and classwork that allowed me to work through my thoughts together, Sankofa influenced my work for the better.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful job. Thank you so much for that, Sydney. Okay, do we have any more questions? Y'all want to talk to each other like Socratic style and volley a question? Madeline, want to shake it up a little bit? You look like you're ready to shake it up with a question. You don't have to. I was just, Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. Talk about that.
Okay, so I have a question to present to the class. So at the beginning or towards the middle of the year, we did a Socratic seminar that kind of focused on Sankofa and our research process. So how is that helpful to you in understanding Sankofa and also understanding how others are using it?
Okay, so I'm Ainsley on Madeline's computer, but oh, it's like double timing me. But the seminar that we did really, it kind of just made Sankofa more relatable so I could understand it more, because all of my peers were kind of talking about how they were using Sankofa and different ways that they were using it. Because like I was mostly focused on using it in my project, but then hearing like people like my other researchers like Ella or something talk about how she was using it like more personally, or maybe how she was looking back at her original sources or original like Sydney's sources or something like that. It just kind of was a reminder for me to go back and look at that too, because Sankofa isn't just like one part of your research, like it's all around your research. Like it can be implemented into any section of it. So the seminar just kind of helped remind me of that. And I was able to implement it into more of my research after that.
Well said. I did not even think about that. I completely forgot about that when we talked about Sankofa and the Socratic. And that was actually the first time that I ran a Socratic with my AP research students. They typically work really individually, independent of each other. And I wanted them to sort of collaborate really around samples of the exam. And that was my main focus for that. But the fact that they took away the Sankofa framework from that was really, that's huge. So thanks, girls. That was great. Good reminder. Okay. Other questions? This is great. You guys are, man, I am sad that we weren't at Texas Name because it would have, y'all were very, very prepared for that. So
I have more questions.
anyone
Dr.
else want to jump
Gibson.
in?
Oh, do we have another student question?
Dr. Bun, can you ask that again? I'm sorry, my computer was muted.
Yeah,
so
you're
that-
fine. I was gonna say I have
Yeah, yeah.
questions if there are no more student questions.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah, let's do
okay,
it.
okay.
We have a few more
So-
minutes. We have, how many minutes, guys? So 15 minutes.
I will not
But I
take
wanna-
that long. I don't think.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've been talking about Sankofa in your research. Other than that, because I know you're going to take that forward, what is one other thing you learned that is going to stick with you and that you'll take forward?
Well, if we're talking about just like the things that we've learned in this class, I definitely feel like this was one of the most useful classes I've taken all of high school, even obviously like middle school too, but like I wouldn't really count that. But definitely like one of the smartest decisions I ever made was taking this class because I feel so much more prepared now, not only in an academic sense, but in like a professional sense, just because of how many presentations we have to do, how much we have to talk, and being able to articulate our arguments is a skill that I don't think I fully developed until this class. And also the way that it made us think so critically about what we were trying to prove too. I think that that's helpful in any circumstance, especially a academic or professional one. So I'll definitely carry like the skills that I've learned through Sankofa, through Dr. G, and just through our researchers in general, like for the rest of my life.
You make me so proud, Sydney. Thank you. What else, guys?
Okay, kind of leading off of Sydney, a specific skill that I learned was like academic communication, especially to people who may be more advanced than you. So for my research, I did speak with the vice president of Buc-ee's, and going into that conversation, I was really nervous because I was like, oh, he knows a lot more than me. But then I was like, I should be confident in my work because I have done the forefront of it, and I kind of knew what I was asking. So definitely this class has given me the confidence to like reach out to people and hear their ideas and new perspectives in order to find out new things and new conclusions.
Well said. Well said. Go ahead, Brad. Was that you?
Yeah. I would say that another thing that or at least a very important skill that I have definitely learned is that understanding, excuse me, pretty much being very mindful of many of the obstacles that you will face along the way, and also being mindful of the time that you have available to you. Because especially with many of the projects that you have, like especially in this class, and just being as a high schooler in general, you have a lot of these things going on, and you're just jumbling so many things at once. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming at times. So with that in mind, being mindful of trying to create this sort of organized schedule and making a good timeline of what you're going to do and when you're going to do it is definitely one of the probably one of the biggest takeaways that I'll definitely take from Sankofa and pretty much research as a great endeavor, as well as encountering many mistakes along the way, many being on my part. But for me to be able to own up to these mistakes and stare them in the eye and continue to move forward is another thing that I would say is probably another big takeaway.
Brad, you had said,
Jump right in.
oh,
Okay, something that I learned from taking this class is to taking my research as it is. Like, I know sometimes I was pushed to try to prove a certain point especially near the conclusion of my research, but like embracing the limitations that I had and being able to write that in my own research so I can really see like the implications and limitations, like getting a final conclusion that's true to what I found and not just like what I'm pushing to find, is something that I was able to kind of understand throughout this research project and whole class year. So yeah.
That's a great lesson. That's a great lesson. Tackle that one? Is that everybody? That's good. That was great. Thank you, Dr. Vaughn. That was a good question.
Stuff, guys. Okay, so comment.
Oh, he's muted again. 1 second. Okay, there we go.
Comment for Brad. When I was doing my research, I had a similar problem where I was writing about something where I couldn't find enough sources that were quality. I couldn't find enough high quality sources. And I especially couldn't find sources coming from the United States. So I wrote on inclusive playgrounds, and it's just at that time not something we were really embracing. But there is a hidden benefit when you start researching and you can't find sources. What do you think that is?
Excuse me, sorry. The benefit that I would say is not having the resources that are widely available to you is pretty much thinking outside the box and pretty much putting the pieces that you have available to you. Say maybe you don't have a specific source on this specific event, but you have sources that are maybe surrounding or maybe related to it in some way. So in my mind, I would say that being able to put the pieces together, draw the line of what connects all these sources together, and pretty much the people around you that have experience or have kind of some knowledge of that sort of subject, I would say is pretty much the fine line of the benefit of not having the sources that you need available to you.
That's true. That's a good one. It also means that there's a gap in the scholarly research and somebody needs to fill that, and it might as well be your name, right? So as you continue research, when you can find those kind of niche topics where not a lot of people are looking into it yet, that creates an opportunity for you as a researcher to start expanding that knowledge base and becoming an expert in those fields. Okay, what else? So here's one for Madeline, who, if you don't get a job at Buc-ee's, there's no justice. Like, if
For sure.
you're gonna be the vice president of Buc-ee's. You had mentioned that you had several different data collection methods, right? And that sometimes your data differed from method to method. What does that tell you about your data?
That's a good question. So, okay. So I think it showed me that data doesn't always have to be consistent. And again, like, it depends. Okay, so my 3 different data collection methods was an interview, a survey, and observations. And so I think those are all very different. And 2 of those deal with people as well. Like, the observations was more of like what was happening in store and like where the items were placed. And so I think it shows that with people, you're going to get different variables and different data. And it's not always going to be consistent. And you may not always see that implemented in the store, or the company may not always recognize those different specific preferences of different people. So I think it just really just showed me that data doesn't always have to be quote unquote like quantifiable amongst all 3 data collection methods, as long as there are like conclusions that can be drawn and that they reference each other. And again, like I spoke about this earlier, but that it remains consistent throughout all different parts of it.
So I'm sure Dr. Gibson talked to y'all about the importance of triangulating.
Hold on, Dr. Bunn. Sorry, I keep having to mute my computer because it'll echo. Okay, there you go.
I'm doing the same thing. So
Yeah.
I'm sure Dr. Gibson talked to y'all about triangulating your data. It's so important, Madeline, you had this experience. Sometimes what you're observing differs from what people are telling you in interviews. And sometimes that differs from what is written on a questionnaire response. And that could be, even if it's the same person, like you could interview Taylor Bunn, and I might do something in the field that is different than what I told you. That can happen for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people just aren't comfortable saying things. Sometimes people don't realize that what they're saying is different than what they're doing. But as researchers, that's just something that y'all want to be aware of. And so I would encourage you, as you continue your research and go into college, try not to rely on only one type of data source. You will see studies based on, oh, well, we did a questionnaire and it asked a bunch of questions and we had 750 responses. And all of that's great. That's a good start. That will tell you something. But if you're looking at a phenomena that happens out in the world, what people tell you on paper doesn't necessarily line up with what then happens in the right? So that's just something to be aware of. If you do see a data point that if it was a trend in your questionnaire and your interviews and your observations, you know there's something there. That's a lot of congruence. And so that's for sure something you want to build on. It doesn't mean throw the other stuff out, but there's something that's causing that not to meet up, right? Okay.
And triangulating is something that you all will encounter more often in your graduate level courses.
Yeah.
For AP research, it doesn't really ask us to do that, but it does ask me to describe to you how different forms of data can tell different stories, if that makes sense. So that is great. I love that. Thank you, Dr. Bunn.
You're so welcome. I don't think I have any other burning important questions, but I really appreciated y'all sharing your experiences with me today. And I'm sorry y'all didn't get to present them at Texas Name this year, but I hope you'll try again. And I hope you keep researching. I think it's one of the most important things we can do is understand how to research and how to get good data and how to find trends instead of just like, hey, I saw this on this one source, so I'm going to take that as a fact, right? We see a lot of fully grown adults making that mistake all the time. So really happy to see this work happening, and you've got a great teacher. And thanks.
Thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to give these guys some special graduation cords now for their hard work and effort, and for being accepted to present at Texas Name, even though we weren't able to make it. So super proud of this bunch, and thank you so much again. We appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great summer.
Yeah. Yes.
Bye.
Bye, Dr. Bunn. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.